You're learning with 9 to 5 English. Business English for the workplace. Hi, Tim here with another 9 to 5 English lesson. In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to talk about imagined situations or hypotheticals in English. Humans are always using their imagination. Sometimes we think about what might happen in the future. Other times, we have to imagine different situations in order to figure out what is the best decision to make today or in the future. And when we talk about ideas like this, we use particular words and structures. For example, when we introduce a hypothetical or imagined situation, there are a few expressions we can use. We often start with the words say or suppose. So, something like, suppose you were the boss, is understood as, imagine you were the boss. You can also ask a question using what if, such as, what if you were the boss? That word if is especially important. We'll see that word again later in this lesson. For now, let's practice these different ways of introducing hypothetical situations. Listen to each example, then repeat it for yourself. Ready? Let's get started.
What if you were manager for one day?
Say you had $1 million to spend on a new project.
Suppose you took the job in Spain.
Just imagine you still worked in Chicago.
One really important thing to notice is that we use the past tense to introduce an imagined situation. We don't say, suppose you take the job. Instead, we say, suppose you took the job. So we've looked at how to introduce a hypothetical situation in the present. But what language do we use when we discuss an imagined situation? Well, in this case, we use conditional sentences. A conditional sentence has two parts. One part uses if, and the other part uses could or would. For example, if I took the job, I would make more money. But here's the thing. We don't always say the if part. I mean, if someone asks what would happen if you took a new job, you might just say, I would make more money. Let's try talking about hypothetical situations using if and would and could. Remember to repeat the examples after you hear them.
If the stock price was lower, we could afford it.
I would probably be a lot happier in Europe.
With a company car, I could get around more easily.
For one thing, we would see a big increase in sales.
Did you notice that with can mean if I had? So with a company car means if I had a company car. Now, so far, everything we've practiced is about the present. That is, we're imagining if something were true now. But what happens when we imagine if the past was different? Well, this gets a bit trickier. First of all, instead of saying something like, if I lived in Seattle, you'd say, if I had lived in Seattle. The had done part tells us that you're imagining something about the past. So, stayed is for a present imagined situation, while had stayed is for a past imagined situation. Then, instead of would and could do something, you would say would have or could have done something. So instead of I would be happy, you can say I would have been happy. I know this sounds like a lot of extra words, but it should make sense once you try it all together. So, let's try some practice with using past hypotheticals. Once again, repeat the examples you hear.
With better pay, I would have stayed at my last job.
I could have studied law if I had done better on the LSAT.
We would have bought them out if we had had the money.
Without more help, we couldn't have met the deadline.
One other thing to notice is that you can switch the order of the sentence parts. You can start with the if statement, or you can finish with the if statement. It's really up to you. Okay, so we've practiced some ways of talking about hypothetical situations. But how does this sound in a conversation? Let's listen to a short dialogue between Wendy and Bill. They are imagining how things would have been different if they had had more money to spend on marketing. Let's listen.
We really needed a bigger marketing budget.
Right. What if we'd had another $10,000 to spend?
Yeah, then we could have run those TV ads.
And maybe sales wouldn't have dropped last month.
How did that sound? Bill asked about a past hypothetical situation, and then they both imagined what could have or would have happened. Now it's your turn to practice. We'll repeat the dialogue, but this time we're going to beep out the second speaker's words. You have to say those parts yourself. Remember to ask a question about a hypothetical extra $10,000. Then say what wouldn't have happened to sales. Ready? Here we go.
We really needed a bigger marketing budget. Yeah, then we could have run those TV ads.
All right, that's all for this lesson. We've learned some great ways to talk about hypothetical situations. We'll be back soon with some more useful English expressions. Until then, so long and happy learning.